Hello. When street-level syndicates go to war, they use violence, blunt weapons, firearms. You usually see it coming. But when the world's biggest megacorporations go to war, the weapons change. They use server farms, corporate espionage, and autonomous price bots. Today, we're looking at how modern tech giants actually crush their rivals. It isn't fought just in the boardroom anymore. It's fought in the digital streets. This is what happens when a $1 million megacorp tries to flex on the hacking community and realizes very quickly and way too late that they just kicked a giant digital hornet's nest. Let's talk about Sony. If you had to name one company that owns your living room, it's probably Sony. Starting out in a bombed out department store in post-World War II Tokyo, Sony didn't just build gadgets, they built culture. They gave us the Walkman, making portable music for the first time, and dominated the TV world for decades with the Trinitron. Today, Sony is a massive multi-headed beast, operating in three major worlds: electronics and gaming. This is the house that PlayStation built. They aren't just selling consoles. They're the world's leader in image sensors, meaning a lot of cameras in people's pockets likely rely on Sony tech. They're one of the big 3 record labels and one of the big 5 Hollywood studios. From Spider-Man to Beyonce, if you're watching it or humming it, they probably own the rights. And they're still innovating. They're currently pivoting hard into mobility and AI, even partnering with Honda to build an electric vehicle. Sony's secret sauce is called kando, a Japanese word for emotional involvement. They don't just want to sell you a product. They want to sell you the way it makes you feel. Founded in 1946 as Tokyo Tsushin Kogyo, they built Japan's first transistor radio and the world's first portable music player. They currently hold about 50% of the entire global market for image sensors. In 2006, Sony released the PlayStation 3. They called it the Black Monolith. It had a cell processor, it included a high-definition Blu-ray player, and backwards compatibility for older games. This time, Sony also included a feature called Other OS, which let you install Linux, letting you run a full-fledged operating system. While Windows and Mac OS live on their desktop, Linux runs basically everything else. Born in 1991 as a hobby project by student Linus Torvalds, Linux is the ultimate open source success story. It isn't a single product, but a kernel. The core code that bridges hardware and software. It powers 100% of the world's top 500 supercomputers, most of the internet servers, and every Android phone on the planet. Because the code is free to view and modify, thousands of developers collaborate to keep it secure and stable. It dominates 90% plus of all cloud infrastructure as of 2026. PlayStation 3 had all the ingredients for mass appeal, and the more tech-savvy PlayStation fans were excited to be able to install Linux. But then in 2010, Sony got paranoid. They were terrified of piracy, so they pushed a mandatory firmware update that stripped the Other OS feature away. They literally reached into your living room and took back a feature you already paid for. And that was a massive mistake. The community was outraged at Sony. Even fans who never even intended to use the Other OS feature didn't like the way Sony handled it. It set a precedent that Sony could take away something you bought whenever it wants. Enter George Hotz, aka GeoHot. He was a 21-year-old tech enthusiast from New Jersey who had already gained legendary status in the homebrew community for being the first person to jailbreak the iPhone. When Sony locked down the PS3, GeoHot took it as a challenge. He reverse engineered the entire system. He found the PS3's root key, the master cryptographic password, that tells the hardware what the code is allowed to run. Once he had that, the PlayStation 3 was wide open. He published the key online and even made a jailbreak tutorial on YouTube. Now, if you're Sony, what do? You patch the software and go back to business as usual, right? Nope. They crashed out. Sony crashed out and went completely ballistic. They didn't just sue GeoHot, they tried to ruin him. They got a federal judge to let him subpoena his PayPal records and his Twitter account. And this is the part that really pissed people off. They forced YouTube to hand over all the IP addresses of every single person who had watched this tutorial video. Think about that. Sony was tracking you and treating you like a criminal just for watching a video. And that was the spark. The internet didn't just get mad. It went to war.
Greetings, Sony customers and PS3 users. We are Anonymous. During the last few days, Anonymous has been targeting Sony for their outrageous treatment of not only PS3 users and jailbreakers, but also of the general public. Their propaganda regarding jailbreaking implies that it encourages piracy, and thereby makes people lose their jobs, whereas jailbreaking actually just means you are making your device do what it should do.
The hacktivist collective known as Anonymous declared Operation Sony. Anonymous isn't an organization, it's an idea, emerging in the 2000s from the message boards of 4chan. This decentralized collective transformed trolling into a global force for digital activism. Operating under the iconic Guy Fawkes mask, they follow a simple mantra. We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us. Anonymous has no leaders or hierarchy. They're famous for using DDoS attacks that crash websites with massive traffic, and doxing, leaking private data. They've targeted everyone from government agencies and global banks to the Church of Scientology and ISIS. While they started with internet pranks, they eventually pivoted to serious political influence, supporting movements like the Arab Spring and Occupy Wall Street, and launching attacks against oppressive regimes. To some, they're modern-day digital Robin Hoods. To others, they're cyber terrorists. Regardless of the label, Anonymous proved that a group of strangers with a shared goal and a keyboard can disrupt the most powerful institutions on Earth.
Users of Sony's PlayStation network have been greeted instead by error messages. The electronics giant says it shut down the service after suffering what the company called an external intrusion.
Anonymous launched a massive DDoS attack that brought Sony's corporate website to their knees. But while Sony was distracted trying to keep their homepage online, a different, much more dangerous group slipped through the back door. In April 2011, Sony realized they'd been hit by the mother of all data breaches. We're talking about personal information, names, addresses, and credit card hashes of 77 million Sony customers. Sony had to do something they'd never done before. They physically pulled the plug on the entire PlayStation network. The network stayed dark for nearly a month. Millions of people couldn't play games, stream movies, or log in. It was a blackout that cost Sony an estimated $171 million in damages and a lifetime of brand loyalty. Brand loyalty that Sony worked hard to build with the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2.
Hello, my name is Kazuo Hirai, and I'd like to share some news about our PlayStation and Curiosity services. First of all, I'd like to send my sincere apologies for the inconvenience the service outage has caused you, and want to thank you for all the patience that you've shown as we worked through this restoration process. Since the attacks on our networks, we've been working around the clock to bring game and media services back online.
So what was the end result? Sony and GeoHot eventually settled out of court. He agreed to never hack a Sony product ever again, and Sony agreed to stop trying to ruin his life. No massive damages were awarded on either side in that specific suit. But the tech-savvy gamers who loved the Linux feature weren't going away without a fight. The other OS removal actually cost Sony more in the long run. They eventually had to pay out a $3.75 million class action settlement to the PS3 owners who were pissed off about the feature being removed. As for GeoHot, he's doing just fine. He went to work for Google, then Facebook, and eventually he started his own AI self-driving car company called Comma.ai. But the lesson here is one Sony learned the hard way. In the physical world, the corporation has the power. But in the digital world, not so much. You don't want to mess with the internet. When the internet comes together, especially the nerds, bro, it's pretty much over for you. You shouldn't have even started that war to begin with. The internet is undefeated. Back in 2009, a startup called Quidzy built a massively efficient robotics-driven e-commerce empire, operating under the site diapers.com. They weren't just slinging baby wipes. They engineered a warehouse system that let them ship bulky items faster and cheaper than anyone else. More importantly, they locked down the holy grail of retail. Young, high-income parents who buy the exact same stuff on a predictable schedule. And Amazon was watching in the shadows very closely. Amazon started in 1994 as a scrappy online bookstore in a garage. Today, it isn't just a store. It's the invisible plumbing of the modern economy. If you buy something, watch something, or run a website, it's likely wrapped in Amazon's tentacles. AWS, Amazon Web Services, provides the cloud infrastructure that powers everything from Netflix and Airbnb to government agencies. They're currently in the fight for AI dominance, building their own custom chips to rival NVIDIA. Amazon had quietly become a global advertising titan because they actually know exactly what you buy, not just what you like. Their ad business even rivals the reach of YouTube and Meta. AWS holds roughly 31% of the global cloud market. They now deliver over 1 billion items same day overnight annually. They're spending a record $200 billion on AI and space infrastructure in 2026 alone. Amazon knocked on the door, and they made an offer to buy Quidzy. The startup said no, which in hindsight, big mistake. So instead of walking away, Amazon decided to take them by force. Imagine you're running a shop, and the billionaire across the street builds a robot whose only job is to stare at your price tags and instantly make their price tags 30% cheaper. That's exactly what Amazon did. They deployed a specialized pricing algorithm, basically a financial killbot. It tracked every single item Quidzy sold and automatically undercut them by up to 30%. It was an artificial market crash. All Quidzy executives could do is sit there and watch their internal metrics flatline. Think about this. Amazon was literally willing to set over 100 million on fire in just 3 months, on just diapers, just to watch these guys slowly choke. As the startup's cash reserves dried up, the founders panicked. They started desperately trying to open backdoor deals, backdoor channels, and they ended up on the phone with Walmart, trying to negotiate a buyout to save themselves. But there are no secrets at this level of Game of Thrones corporate warfare. Jeff Bezos found out about the Walmart talks, and he took it personally. Amazon escalated the siege, and they launched Amazon Mom. Free 2-day shipping plus another 30% discount on top of the already slashed prices. The bots drove the prices of diapers so low they were basically handing them out for free. Quidzy executives realized they were totally trapped. They can't outprice a machine backed by infinite capital, and Walmart couldn't move fast enough to throw them a lifeline. November 2010, Quidzy caved, selling their whole operation to Amazon for $545 million. The second the ink was dry, Amazon quietly turned off the bots. Just like that, the discounts vanished, the prices went back to normal, and the competition was completely erased. They didn't even keep the company. After sucking out all the customer data, Amazon just shut the brand down. If the Amazon story was about dropping a financial nuke from orbit, this next one is about hand-to-hand combat in the streets, or more accurately, in the backseat of a Prius. Back around 2014, Uber and Lyft were locked in an absolute deathmatch. Uber didn't just disrupt the taxi industry, it rewrote the rules of the gig economy. What started in 2009 as a way to get a black car in San Francisco has evolved into a global logistics layer that moves people, food, and freight in over 70 countries. More riders attract more drivers, More drivers means lower wait times, which brings even more riders. This same network now delivers everything from a burrito to a bottle of wine. Uber is aggressively transitioning from human drivers to a robo-taxi future. Uber's goal is go anywhere and get anything. They're betting that in the future, you won't need to own a car or walk to a store. While Uber is busy trying to be the app for everything, Lyft has taken a different path. In 2026, they've doubled down on being a specialized mobility platform, focusing on the quality of the ride rather than the quantity of the services. They've also partnered with NVIDIA and Waymo to create a hybrid network where autonomous shuttles and human drivers work side by side to ensure you never have to wait more than a few minutes for a pickup. Back around 2014, Uber and Lyft were locked in an absolute deathmatch, but Uber just wasn't trying to outmarket their competition. They were running operations that felt more like a CIA Black Ops campaign. They started Operation Slog. Uber armed contractors with burner phones and prepaid credit cards. These brand ambassadors had one job: open the Lyft app, request a ride, and wait for the driver to get all the way to the pickup spot. The Uber operative would then try to poach them, offer a cash bonus, special company perks, but if the driver wasn't interested, they would cancel the ride at the very last second. Lyft eventually caught on to this and claimed Uber had requested and canceled over 5,500 rides in just a few months. Think about that. Think about what that does to a network. It pisses off the drivers, it completely ruins Lyft's algorithm, it creates this massive artificial surge in pricing that makes Lyft look totally unreliable to regular passengers. But Slog was just the infantry. The real weapon was in the code. Uber allegedly developed a highly classified spyware program. They literally named it Hell. Listen to how diabolical this is. The Hell program exploited a vulnerability in Lyft's API. Because Lyft's system had a flaw where it assigned a permanent, unique numerical ID to each driver, kind of like a digital social security number. Uber's software was able to track the exact movements of almost every Lyft driver in the city in real time. Uber created a massive grid of fake Lyft rider accounts all over the city. These fake accounts would spoof their GPS locations, pinging the Lyft servers constantly. Since Uber knew who their own drivers were, they just overlaid the two maps. If an Uber driver and a Lyft driver were in the same exact spot, Uber knew that the driver was double apping, working for both companies. And that's when they struck. The algorithm would identify these double appers and push highly lucrative, subsidized rides directly to their phones. They were essentially bribing the drivers in real time to log out of Lyft and take the Uber ride instead. Eventually the secret got out, and the blowback was massive. Lyft drivers filed class action lawsuits against Uber for invasion of privacy and violating the Federal Wiretap Act.
The site claims Uber's Operation Slog gives employees burner phones and credit cards to create dummy accounts to get the job done. This tech news site, The Verge, unveiled these documents accusing the company of secretly trying to recruit drivers from competitor Lyft.
Title III of the Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act of 1968, better known as the Federal Wiretap Act. Born in the era of Watergate and mob bosses, it was designed to stop the government and private citizens from eavesdropping on private conversations.
Acting boss to boss of the Colombo family.
I shall not be a candidate for President of the United States.
In 2026, this law is the front line of a massive legal war over how your data is tracked online. This has triggered a wave of lawsuits against companies using tracking pixels. Courts are currently deciding if a website intercepts your data the moment you click a link, if that counts as effectively wiretapping your browser. Violating the act can land you in federal prison for up to 5 years, or hit you with fines of $10,000 plus per violation. The Federal Wiretap Act was updated by the ECPA in 1986 to include emails and computer data, though critics argue that the law is still catching up to AI and 2026 tracking technologies. It got so bad that the FBI and the Department of Justice actually opened a federal probe into the Hell software to see if Uber was illegally interfering with a competitor.
Called thousands of Lyft rides and then cancel it when the drivers almost reach the destination.
So what actually happened? Uber eventually settled the class action lawsuit with the drivers for around $2 million. which to a company the size of Uber is basically cup holder change. The DOJ probes eventually fizzled out without any massive criminal indictments for the HELP program itself, though the scandal helped force Uber's aggressive CEO Travis Kalanick to resign in 2017. That's America, baby. You get in trouble, you get a slap on the wrist, you pay a fine, and you keep it moving. And as for Lyft, they survived. Lyft had enough venture capital to bleed and stay alive. They're still operating as a multi-billion-dollar company. Do me a favor, hit the like button. If me or you hacked a server or sabotaged a competitor, we'd be staring down 20 years in a federal cell. But when a billion-dollar megacorp does it, the consequences are just a quarterly business expense. Stay safe and stay salty.